Today I'm back at Lindholme Lakes. It's a winter's day, it's freezing cold, ice on the water this morning. What's the best tactic to catch fish here at Lindholme? Well, it's got to be at this time of year, bomb and corn. Bomb and corn fishing has produced a lot of winning weights here at Lindholme through these colder months in the year. It's a very simple tactic. It's loose feeding corn with a catapult, trying really to keep it as tight as you can. Today the conditions has been quite difficult for me because I've had a wind slightly across me and in the face, and of course when you've got conditions like this it's difficult to feed a long way out, so you're feeding maybe 15 to 20 metres maximum to try to keep the loose fed corn really tight. Corn does tend to spread, but don't worry about this, because when it does spread out a little it means that the fish have to move around to pick off the bait, so you tend to get better bites when you feed in a little bit bigger area anyway. It's a tactic where often it's better to start on a different method, maybe fishing with bomb and bread out in the lake or a method feeder, and feed in an area for maybe an hour to get an amount of bait into the swim. When I say an amount of bait, it's rare that I've fed more than a tin of corn fishing with these tactics, because a tin of corn, when you look at it, it's quite a lot of individual grains of corn. So a tin of corn will last you for a day's fishing or even a match. The corn that I've used today is a dynamite corn. It's the skin of the corn slightly harder. This helps it to stay on the hair rig. It's also quite uniform in size, so that when you're firing it out it goes in a reasonably tight area. If it's all different shapes and sizes it tends to spread out, so that's the corn that you're looking for. Just a nice size and a uniform size throughout as well. I'm using just a 9-foot acolyte rod with a 1 ounce tip. The 1 ounce tip is quite important. I'll explain that in a little while, why a 1 ounce tip is important for this rig. The rig is very simple. It's just a sliding link onto a 15-gram bomb. I'm not casting very far. Corn you can feed maybe up to 25 metres maximum. So I only want a light bomb. I don't want to be using a bomb that's 30 gram that crashes into the swim. I'm just trying to fish nice and gentle, landing that bomb on the surface, not making too much noise. It's winter at the end of the day. You don't want to be spooking the fish away. They're not wanting to come to noise at this time of the year. Let's have a closer look how I actually make this rig. As if by magic, I've whizzed you back to my tackle room just to have a look at this corn rig in depth. The first thing you need to tie is the feeder gum part of the rig. I'll just take about probably a foot of feeder gum. The first thing I do then is twizzle it together, or actually just twist each side of the gum to form a twizzle piece of the feeder gum. So I'm twisting both parts of it opposite to each other. Now what that leaves is an eye at the end to connect the main line to. If you keep pulling that down you can get that eye very small. Now then I just have a simple one overhand loop, and that's sufficient to keep that feeder gum together. Pull that tight. I've never had this come apart, so just that single knot is enough. I don't want big knots on anything. It's a nice, neat little knot. So that's the twizzle part of the gum. Then you need a knot at the bottom. Again, wet it, and I go through 7 times. That's about 7 times, I think. I wet that again and pull that down tight. not over tightening. If you try to pull it too tight, it burns on itself and will break. Right, so then I just trim that off a couple of mil below the actual knot, just as a safeguard. So that's the feeder gum part of it done. I've already got the rod to one side and the 5-pound main line is on the rod. I've then put on a link and a bomb, just a normal feeder link and a bomb. All rigs at Lindholm need to be running, so it's just a free running bomb. It's a 15-gram bomb. It's actually a Daiwa bomb and they're flattered on each side, which I think works better because it grips the bottom better rather than a normal Ardsley type shaped bomb. The next thing is to put a float stop in place. I just use a small float stop. Again, wet the line and just pull a float stop onto the main line. This acts as a stop. Right, so that's your stop for your bomb. The next thing then is to tie the feeder gum on. And I go through the eye of the gum where I've made, and just a simple 6-turn blood knot. Again, wet the knot, pull it down tight. Once that's in place, then I trim. I just leave a couple of mil below the actual knot. So that's your feeder gum. The next thing, pull the stop down onto the top of the knot. It'll not slide over that feeder gum because it's much thicker, so that's the stop for the actual bomb. So that's the main part of the rig ready. To attach the hook length, I've got the hook length here already tied. It's got a yellow push stop in place that's set about maybe 13 or 14 mil below the bend of the hook, which takes the corn nicely. Right, attaching the hook length is simple. You just pass the 012, I use 012 Supplex fluorocarbon for this. 012, it's amazing. I've had some massive fish even on 012 with this rig. So the next thing is to pass the main part of the hook length through the actual loop that I've formed on the end. And then that drops behind the actual knot that I formed on the bottom of the power gum. Feeder gum, should I say. I keep calling it power gum, it's feeder gum. Right, once that's in place, then you can slide it down to the knot, and that's how to attach the hook length. I've never ever had that come off. And there we have it, your simple bomb and corn rig. The line I'm using is a Kamasan animal feeder line in 5 pound. It sinks very well and it's a very robust line. I'm using a T911 it's a Teflon coated hook. It's a very dark coloured hook which matches the bottom, so it's difficult to see when you're hair rigging. The corn, when I put it on the hair rig, there's 2 ways that I do it. I actually go through the round bit of the corn so that the stop sits on the flat base of the corn. This is a really nice way to do it. It sits on the hook really well. And I'm not casting a big distance, so it stays on the hook no problem at all. If I'm casting further out into the lake and just fishing a single bait trying to catch F1s and carp, I then change, I go through the side of the corn so that it's very difficult then to cast it off when you're casting bigger distances. You'll have noticed today that every time I cast to where I'm fishing, I feed first. So I feed with the catapult, I've already baited the hook, and I cast to where the bait is landing. So I'm right in among the feed. Once the bomb hits the bottom, I'm then tightening the tip round to the bomb. So I'm putting quite an arc in the quiver tip. This is important because what I'm trying to do is make a bolt effect rig. You've got a piece of feeder gum that stretches. So once I've literally pulled the quiver tip round to the bomb, you're creating a bolt effect. So when you get a bite, often they pull themselves on. You get very vicious bites often that you only need to pick the rod up because the fish is already hooked. This is why I use a 1 ounce tip. I've tried it with a 3/4 ounce and I've tried it with an 1.5 ounce, but an ounce tip just seems, it's a carbon tip, so it tightens up quite quickly, and once it's wound round to the bomb, it seems to work best in a 1 ounce size quiver tip. The other thing that I've noticed today is often I've cast out, I've fed to start with, then cast into the feed. And you can sit there for 2, 3, 4, maybe as long as even 5 minutes without a bite. But then just pinging maybe 5 or 6 grains of corn over the top. It's as if the fish almost seem to follow that bait down. And this has been a great way to attract a bite if I've waited a period without a bite. Patience is the key to fishing this method, and waiting for bites. You've got the trap set, your bomb's on the bottom, everything's straight. Once a fish picks up that bait, you'll see that bite, but just be patient. These tactics work fantastically well when the water clears in the winter months. Corn's a very visual bait, and fish are attracted to it and like to eat it. So just get out on the bank and give these tactics a try. It'll catch you lots more fish.